If I were to wrestle him now, we'd have to have a dustpan under the ring to sweep.
Triple H has never been Hulk Hogan's biggest fan, and now he's finally exposing why so many wrestlers couldn't stand him, from Bret Hart to Vince McMahon. But what Triple H revealed is even worse than Hogan's racist scandals and union busting. Past. Let me break it down. The ultimate betrayal. By now it's no secret Hogan was never known for loyalty, and one of his biggest betrayals left Vince McMahon and Triple H furious. Picture this, it's 1994. Hogan has just left WWE in the middle of the steroid trial chaos, and instead of fading away, he makes a shocking move that blindsides Vince. He signs with WCW, WWE's biggest rival. This wasn't just business, it was personal. Vince felt completely betrayed because he had taken Hogan and made him into a massive star, only for his golden boy to flip sides in June 1994. In the Netflix documentary Mr. McMahon, Vince admitted how much it hurt him, saying he built Hogan into a superstar only for him to run to the competition, which broke his heart. But here's where things get even more twisted. Hogan's move was genius from a business perspective, but toxic personally. Instead of just joining WCW as another wrestler, Hogan pulled off one of the most shocking heel turns in wrestling history at Bash at the Beach 1996, revealing himself as the third man with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to form the New World Order. This heel turn changed wrestling forever, but it also revealed something darker. Hogan could finally be himself, the manipulative, self-serving politician that other wrestlers had been dealing with for years. As Hollywood Hulk Hogan, he no longer had to play the all-American hero, and let's be honest, this version of Hogan was captivating TV. The New World Order helped WCW dominate the ratings war for 83 straight weeks, nearly bankrupting WWE, but behind the scenes, Hogan's behavior was reportedly even worse. Take Billy Kidman, for example. This talented high flyer was trying to break through, but Hogan buried him publicly, saying he couldn't draw flies at a flea market. Eric Bischoff even confirmed Hogan disrespected a younger talent, using creative control to hold them back while protecting his own spot. This became a clear pattern with Hogan, using his power not to elevate the next generation, but to secure his own place at the top, no matter what it meant for the business or his peers. And yet, the most shocking betrayal was still to come. Fast forward to 2002, Hogan returns to WWE after Vince bought WCW. At first, he came back as a heel, but his match with The Rock at WrestleMania X8 got such a massive crowd reaction that WWE had to turn him face again. That set up one of the most controversial title reigns ever. The drama centered on Hogan's feud with Triple H in 2002. Triple H had just returned after 8 months out with a serious injury, won the Undisputed Championship at WrestleMania, and then just 1 month later was told to drop the title to Hogan at Backlash. This wasn't part of any long-term plan. It was a last-minute decision made the day of the event because Hogan's popularity was exploding again. Now, imagine being Triple H. You've just fought back from a career-threatening injury, headlined WrestleMania as champion, and then get told you're losing the belt to a part-timer in his late 40s. In his 2004 autobiography, Making the Game, Triple H admitted his frustration, saying he was a proven ratings draw and that this ruined his momentum. And here's the kicker. Years later, when asked about possibly facing an older Hogan in a dream match, Triple H's response was absolutely savage.
He's pretty old now. He's in his mid to late 70s, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
If I were to wrestle him now, we'd have to have a dustpan under the ring.
This wasn't just a wrestling match, it was the birth of a cultural phenomenon that changed entertainment forever. But here's the crazy part. While Hogan was becoming this larger-than-life hero figure, telling kids to train, say their prayers, and eat their vitamins, he was secretly engaging in behavior that would later destroy his reputation among his peers. The first major red flag came with the union situation. Picture this, it's 1986, right before WrestleMania 2, and Jesse "The Body" Ventura is trying to do something groundbreaking, organize wrestlers into a union. This wasn't some wild idea, it was about basic workers' rights like health, benefits, fair pay, and protection from injuries. Wrestlers were labeled independent contractors, meaning no insurance, even though they put their bodies on the line every night. But this is where Hogan allegedly showed his true colors. Instead of standing with his fellow wrestlers, Hogan reportedly went straight to Vince McMahon and told him about the union plans. This led to threats of firings and effectively killed the movement before it even started. Ventura later revealed that Hogan was the one who ratted him out, and because of it, Ventura was fired and lost his job. Imagine being Jesse Ventura. You're trying to fight for everyone's rights, and your supposed friend throws you under the bus to protect his own spot. Ventura has since called Hogan a backstabber and a narcissist in multiple interviews, and honestly, who could blame him? But it gets even worse. During a 1991 lawsuit, Vince McMahon himself testified that Hogan had informed him about the union plans, while Ventura eventually won over $81,000 in royalties. This wasn't rumor, it was confirmed in court, and the ripple effects of that betrayal are massive. Wrestling still doesn't have a union today, and wrestlers continue to suffer career-ending injuries without proper protection. Every time a wrestler gets hurt and struggles to pay for care, you can trace it back to the moment Hogan allegedly chose his own interests over the entire locker room. Meanwhile, Hogan's golden era from 1984 to 1993 made him untouchable. He held the WWF Championship for a record 1,474 days, headlined 8 of the first 9 WrestleManias, and packed arenas worldwide. His 1988 match against Andre the Giant on NBC's The Main Event drew 33 million viewers, still the biggest US TV audience for wrestling in history. But behind all that success, the whispers were getting louder. Wrestlers talked about Hogan's backstage politics, his creative control clauses, and his refusal to lose to others. This is where the word politicking became a common term in wrestling, and Hogan was seen as the master of it. Take Bret Hart, for example. A wrestling icon and one of the most respected technical wrestlers in the world, Hart didn't hold back when it came to Hogan. He accused him of using his influence to avoid dropping the WWF Championship to him in 1993, even though there were supposed plans for Hart to get a proper title run. That comment summed up the dismissive attitude many wrestlers had toward Hogan over the years. Triple H joking about needing a dustpan to sweep him up showed just how little respect was left for the aging legend. To the wrestling world, this was classic Hogan politics, using his fame and backstage pull to stay in the spotlight no matter what it meant for the company's future or the careers of other wrestlers. But here's where things get even crazier, and this is the part that completely destroyed Hogan's reputation. While Hogan was presenting himself as a beloved returning hero, behind the scenes, he was showing his true character. In 2015, a sexy tape from 2007 leaked, and it revealed Hogan repeatedly using racial slurs and making disgusting remarks about his daughter's dating life. He used the N-word multiple times and openly admitted he was racist to a point. This wasn't a slip-up or one bad night, it showed a deep pattern of racist thinking. WWE reacted immediately by firing him, erasing him from programming, and even removing him from the Hall of Fame. The same man who had built his image on messages of positivity and equality was exposed as someone who didn't believe his own words. The backlash from the wrestling community was brutal. CM Punk, who already disliked Hogan's ego and politics, became even more outspoken against him. MVP flat out said Hogan is a racist, pointing directly to what he said on camera. For wrestlers of color, this made everything more personal. They had to work with Hogan, smile, shake his hand, and take advice, all while knowing how he really felt about them. Scott Steiner, who clashed with Hogan in WCW, didn't hold back either, calling him a piece of garbage and accusing him of using political power to bury talent while holding racist views in private. The most damaging part of all this was how it forced people to rethink Hogan's entire career. Suddenly, his refusal to put over black wrestlers, his controlling politics, and his selective mentoring didn't look random anymore. They looked intentional in a much darker way. Mark Henry's story makes this even clearer. After Hogan's racist comments were exposed, WWE suggested Hogan should visit black schools to apologize. But Henry refused, saying Hogan didn't truly regret what he said, and without real remorse, an apology would mean nothing. This shows how deep the damage went, because even Hogan's attempts at reconciliation came off as hollow and self-serving. The scandal revealed a pattern that stretched beyond racism, showing how Hogan's habit of lying and exaggerating extended into his most serious controversies. His first apology focused more on the fact that he was recorded than on the actual hateful things he said, proving he didn't truly grasp why his words were so damaging. At the same time, Hogan's personal life was spiraling publicly. His divorce from Linda Hogan between 2007 and 2009 was full of allegations, rumors of an affair with their daughter Brooke's best friend, claims from Linda that Hogan was abusive and addicted to sex, all playing out in front of the cameras. on their VH1 reality show Hogan Knows Best, which exposed ugly family tensions that only got worse after the split. Then came the 2007 car crash involving his teenage son Nick. While racing, Nick crashed and severely injured passenger John Graziano, who was left with permanent brain damage. Nick served 8 months in jail and leaked calls from prison caught Hogan making tone-deaf remarks about the crash being God's will. What stood out most during this period, though, was Hogan's relationship with money and his obsession with controlling his image. While claiming to be a family man dealing with tragedy, he launched a massive lawsuit against Gawker over the leaked sex tape that exposed his racist comments. With financial backing from billionaire Peter Thiel, Hogan won $140 million in damages, bankrupting the media site. While some framed this as a win for privacy rights, it revealed Hogan's willingness to use extreme legal tactics to protect his brand, even though that brand was built on lies and hypocrisy. Hogan eventually received around $31 million after settlements, but no amount of money could repair his destroyed reputation among his peers. Wrestlers who had already endured his backstage politics now had proof of what many had suspected for years, that the Hulk Hogan the fans worshipped was nothing like the man behind the scenes. What makes this era so significant is how it exposed the long-term pattern of Hogan's behavior across decades. The union betrayal in the 1980s, the manipulative politics of the 1990s, and the racist scandal in the 2000s. Together, it painted the picture of someone who always put himself first, no matter the damage it caused others. And this is why Triple H's revelations hit so hard. As someone who worked side by side with Hogan and saw his behavior up close, Triple H's words about why wrestlers hate him carry weight. Because this wasn't just about creative disagreements or business decisions. It was about fundamental character flaws that affected an entire industry. To truly understand why Hogan became one of the most hated men in wrestling, we have to go back to the beginning. Picture the 1980s when wrestling was about to explode into mainstream pop culture, and at the center stood a blonde, mustached giant who would become the face of sports entertainment, Terry Hulk Hogan Bollea. But while fans were screaming, "What you gonna do, brother?" and flexing their imaginary 24-inch pythons, Hogan was allegedly making cutthroat moves that would put corporate sharks to shame. He began wrestling in 1977 under legendary Japanese trainer Hiro Matsuda, but his rise was far from clean. After joining WWF in 1979 under Vince McMahon Sr., he was actually fired in 1981 for taking a role in Rocky III without permission. But when Vince McMahon Jr. took control of the company in 1982, he saw dollar signs and brought Hogan back in. December 1983. What happened next was historic. On January 23rd, 1984, Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden to win his first WWF World Heavyweight Championship, and that victory launched the era of Hulkamania.
Like Hulk Hogan? No, I don't. I think he's a phony piece of shit.
That's Bret Hart with no filter and complete honesty, calling Hogan a 1 out of 3 wrestler who didn't even know a headlock from a headlamp and accusing him of abusing his power. And when a legend of Hart's caliber speaks like that, you know the tension is real, but things between them ran even deeper, because at WrestleMania 9 in 1993, there were plans for a proper finish to the show that would have highlighted Hart, yet Hogan allegedly convinced McMahon to change the ending, swooping in to defeat Yokozuna in an impromptu match that stole Hart's moment, something Hart later called a black eye on the event and a betrayal he never forgave. And this kind of maneuvering followed Hogan into WCW, where his creative control became a serious problem, like at Starrcade 1997, when Sting's career-defining moment was ruined because Hogan allegedly refused to lose cleanly, a move that killed respect for him. Backstage, and even The Undertaker, known for professionalism and rarely criticizing anyone, admitted Hogan exaggerated a neck injury from a tombstone in 1991 to avoid losing, something that destroyed their trust early on, and coming from a man like Undertaker, that's a brutal indictment. But the biggest issue with Hogan was his hypocrisy. Because while he preached to millions of kids about training hard, saying prayers, and eating vitamins, he was secretly doing the opposite. And the steroid scandal made that clear when he appeared on the Arsenio Hall show during Vince McMahon's trial and denied steroid use, claiming he only took them briefly for injuries despite McMahon warning him not to lie. And then in 1994, Under immunity, Hogan admitted he had used steroids since 1976 for more than 13 years, exposing him as someone willing to say anything to protect his image, even if it meant throwing others under the bus. And the pattern was obvious, because Hogan always put himself first, above his friends, colleagues, and the very business that made him famous, which is why his peers saw the truth even when the fans couldn't, leading us to the final reckoning where everything came full circle in his last years, his death on July 24th, 2025, and Triple H's tribute that revealed the complicated reality of wrestling's most controversial figure. But before that ending, it's important to understand just how deep Hogan's flaws went, because in the 2020s he became increasingly outspoken in his support of Donald Trump, and that alignment brought some of the most divisive and controversial moments of his later life. Hogan endorsed Donald Trump, spoke at the 2024 Republican National Convention, and appeared at rallies where he joked about body slamming Kamala Harris, making comments many viewed as racist and misogynistic. And this political alignment wasn't just about personal beliefs, but highlighted the same troubling behavior wrestlers had dealt with for decades, which is why when Hogan showed up at WWE events in 2025, he was booed by crowds who finally saw through the carefully crafted lie of his public persona. And the backlash only grew worse with his Real American Beer Company in 2024, when Hogan allegedly fired his black brand ambassador Essie Janai after learning about her race and replaced her with white influencers, with Janai's social media posts exposing him and proving that Hogan's racist attitudes were not just a thing of the past, but an ongoing problem. The depth of resentment toward Hogan in the wrestling community was also clear from the number of legends who went on record against him, from Hall of Famers to main event stars, and Bruno Sammartino, one of the most respected champions in history, blasted Hogan's in-ring ability, saying he was never impressed and that Hogan's reputation as a great draw was overblown. While Shawn Michaels had his own ugly clash with Hogan during their 2005 SummerSlam feud when Hogan refused to lose cleanly, leading Michaels to oversell moves in protest and later reveal that Hogan manipulated the storyline to favor himself by switching it from good guy versus good guy to classic heel versus hero booking. Others echoed the same frustrations, like AJ Styles in TNA, who said Hogan never promoted the company because he was embarrassed to be there. And even in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Hogan was accused of cultural insensitivity and refusing to adapt to local styles, while older wrestlers like Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund criticized him for turning wrestling from sport into spectacle and for being a poor role model due to his steroid use. And Attitude Era stars like Chris Benoit called him extremely political based on WCW experiences, while modern wrestlers like MJF openly called him a liar and a racist, showing how younger generations, free from nostalgia, only saw the real Hogan exposed by years of controversy. Taken together, all these testimonies paint a picture of a man who always put himself first, above the business, his peers, and even basic human decency, proving his flaws went far beyond politics or creative disputes and cut to the core of his character. And that brings us to the most emotional part of this story, Hogan's death and the reactions it provoked. Because on July 24th, 2025, Terry Hulk Hogan Bollea died at age 71 from cardiac arrest at his home in Florida, forcing the wrestling world to confront the complicated legacy of one of its biggest stars, and Triple H, now WWE's chief contest officer, found himself in the difficult position of honoring someone whose behavior had caused decades of turmoil, and his response revealed more about the true nature of Hogan's relationships in wrestling than Hogan's own words ever could. Triple H narrated an emotional WWE SmackDown video package on July 25th, 2025, calling Hogan the archetype of a superstar who inspired millions, and he followed it with a social media post saying WWE would not be where it is today without him, and that few, if any, loomed larger than Terry Hulk Hogan Bollea. But what made his tribute fascinating was how carefully it balanced acknowledging Hogan's impact without ignoring the controversies. Because while Triple H never publicly spelled out the reasons why wrestlers hated Hogan, his measured tone after Hogan's death spoke volumes about the complicated feelings in the wrestling world. Fans reacted in equally complex ways, with social media filled both with tributes from people who grew up watching Hulkamania and with harsh criticism from those who could not separate the performer from the man, and posts ranged from mourning a childhood hero to highlighting his racist comments and toxic behavior. with the split showing a clear generational divide as older fans focused on Hogan's role in wrestling's 1980s boom, while younger fans, aware of his scandals, were far less forgiving, and wrestling media reflected this same complexity with obituaries that celebrated his mainstream contributions while also listing the scandals, his union betrayal, racist comments, and manipulative politics as inseparable parts of his legacy. Hogan's death also forced the industry to revisit uncomfortable truths about its past, especially the union issue, which resurfaced as current wrestlers pointed out they still deal with the same problems Ventura tried to solve in the 1980s. And even Vince McMahon, despite his own recent controversies, posted a tribute acknowledging their turbulent relationship by saying, "Despite our ups and downs, Hulk was a brother," a statement that summed up the mix of profitability and the problems that defined Hogan's career. Modern wrestlers carried the discussion forward too, with Seth Rollins openly criticizing Hogan's racism and saying he hated his style, showing a new generation unafraid to speak truth to power, even if that power was represented by a deceased legend, while internationally wrestlers and promotions from Japan, Mexico, and Europe shared stories that described Hogan as disrespectful to their cultures and difficult to work with. In the end, looking at Hogan's career and its aftermath reveals a story of incredible success, built on a foundation of selfish and damaging behavior, because while he undeniably changed wrestling forever, bringing it into the mainstream and creating a template for sports entertainment that still exists today, that success came at a heavy cost not only to Hogan himself, but to the countless wrestlers whose careers and lives were affected by him. Thanks for watching, and check out our other thrilling content by clicking on your screen.